The rain fell in sheets across the city, turning the evening streets into flowing rivers of reflected neon. Huddled beneath the torn awning of a closed bakery, Alex pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders and watched as hurried pedestrians splashed by, eager to get home to warm apartments and hot meals. At 17, Alex had been living on the streets for nearly 6 months. After aging out of his last foster placement and with nowhere to go, he'd learned the hard rules of survival quickly. Stay invisible, trust carefully, keep moving. Tonight, though, the downpour had forced him to seek shelter, his usual sleeping spot in the park already flooded by the spring storm. His stomach growled. The last proper meal he'd eaten was yesterday morning at the community center before they'd run out of breakfast. He reached into his pocket, fingering the 2 crumpled dollar bills that represented his entire wealth. Not enough for anything substantial, but maybe enough for something warm if the rain let up. It was then that he noticed her. Across the street, at the busy intersection, a girl about his age was tapping a white cane frantically against the sidewalk. Even from a distance, Alex could see her distress. She wore dark glasses despite the gloomy evening, and her cane movements became increasingly erratic as she turned in confused circles. When she nearly stepped off the curb into oncoming traffic, Alex moved without thinking. "Whoa, careful," he called out, darting across the street between cars that honked angrily as they swerved. He reached her just as she was about to take another step forward, gently touching her elbow. The lights read, "There are cars coming." The girl jumped at his touch, then turned toward his voice. "Oh, thank you. I'm a bit lost. My orientation class ended late and my phone died, and now I can't call a ride." Her voice trembled slightly. "I thought I knew this area, but with the rain and the noise." She trailed off, her free hand anxiously clutching the strap of her messenger bag. "Where are you trying to get to?" Alex asked, not sure why he was getting involved but unable to just walk away. "Home," she replied, then bit her lip. "Oak Lane in North Hills. I know it's far. I thought I'd be fine taking the bus, but I got turned around when they rerouted because of construction." Alex raised his eyebrows. North Hills was the fancy part of town, at least a 5-mile journey from where they stood. Not somewhere he ever went. People like him weren't welcome in neighborhoods like that. "There's a bus stop a block from here," he said. "We could check the schedule. Could you?" Relief flooded her face. "I'm Riley, by the way." "Alex," he replied automatically, surprised to hear himself use his real name instead of one of the fake ones he typically gave strangers. They made their way to the bus shelter, Riley holding lightly to Alex's arm as he described the path ahead. The schedule posted showed the last bus toward North Hills had left 30 minutes ago. "Great," Riley sighed, leaning against the shelter wall. "My dad's going to freak out. He hates when I try to do things on my own." "You could call a ride share?" Alex suggested. Riley shook her phone at him. "Dead, remember? And I don't have my charger. Pay phone. Do those even exist anymore? And anyway, I don't know any numbers by heart except my dad's office, and he's out of town until tomorrow. My stepmom's probably worried sick, but she'll just tell my dad. And then he'll never let me try to be independent again." Alex shuffled his feet, feeling rainwater seep through the holes in his sneakers. He should leave. This wasn't his problem. The girl clearly came from money if she lived in North Hills. Someone would help her eventually. But something in her determined expression stopped him. She wasn't crying or panicking, just problem-solving. He respected that. "I know the way to North Hills," he found himself saying. "I could walk you to the main entrance of the neighborhood and you could find your way from there." Riley tilted her head, considering. "Why would you do that?" "You don't know me." Alex shrugged before remembering she couldn't see the gesture. "Honestly, I've got nowhere better to be tonight." A small smile crossed her face. "That's probably the most honest answer I've ever gotten. Most people either ignore me or treat me like I'm made of glass." They set off together, the rain eventually easing to a light drizzle. Riley moved surprisingly fast with her cane once they found a rhythm, but after the first mile she began to slow down. "You okay?" Alex asked. Riley nodded, but her face was tight. "My leg's cramping a bit. It happens sometimes when I'm stressed. I'll be fine." They continued another block before Riley stumbled, nearly falling. Alex caught her arm. "This isn't working," he said. "How much do you weigh?" "Excuse me?" Her tone was suddenly frosty. "I'm not being weird," Alex said quickly. "I'm trying to figure out if I can carry you." Riley's expression softened into surprise. Oh, about 120 pounds, I guess. But you don't have to piggyback, he decided. It'll be faster, and we've still got a long way to go. After a moment's hesitation, Riley agreed. Alex crouched down, and she carefully positioned herself on his back. Arms loosely around his shoulders, her cane folded and tucked into her bag. Is this okay? She asked as he stood up, adjusting to her weight. Yeah. You're lighter than you look. Riley laughed. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not. As they continued their journey, the conversation flowed more easily than Alex had expected. Riley talked about her orientation classes, learning to navigate the city without sight after an accident 3 years ago. Alex found himself sharing small, safe pieces of his own life, his love of astronomy, his talent for fixing broken electronics, his favorite spots in the city park. He carefully avoided mentioning he was homeless. People reacted strangely when they found out, either with uncomfortable pity or immediate suspicion. Instead, he let Riley assume he was just another teenager heading home after being out late. What's it like? Alex asked as they passed through downtown, the buildings growing more sparse as they headed toward the wealthier outskirts. Not being able to see? Riley was quiet for a moment. It's like living in a world everyone describes differently. Sometimes I think people lie about colors. How can anyone really know if what I used to see as blue is the same as what someone else sees? Never thought of it that way, Alex admitted, shifting her weight slightly as they climbed a hill. The hardest part isn't the blindness, though, she continued. It's how people change around me. They talk louder or simpler or about me like I'm not there. Or they're afraid to mention anything visual at all, like I'll break if someone describes a sunset. That sounds frustrating? It is. That's why I like doing things on my own, even when it goes wrong, like today. At least I'm living on my terms. She paused. What about you? What's your story? Alex tensed. Not much to tell. Everyone has a story, Riley countered. But it's okay if you don't want to share it. They fell into a comfortable silence after that, with Alex occasionally describing interesting sights along their route. The rain had stopped completely by the time they reached the beginning of the upscale neighborhood, street lamps casting warm golden pools on the wet pavement. We're at Oak Lane, Alex announced, setting Riley down gently. His back ached, but he felt oddly reluctant for the journey to end. Which house is yours? Riley hesitated. It's actually a bit further in. The big one at the end with the... She stopped. Well, I'm told it has stone pillars at the entrance. Number 27. Alex looked down the street lined with elegant houses, each sitting on carefully landscaped grounds. At the far end, barely visible, stood an actual mansion with what looked like a gated entrance. That's pretty far, he said slowly. Are you sure you don't want me to call someone from one of these other houses? Riley shook her head firmly. We're almost there, please. I've already taken up so much of your time, but I'd feel better if I made it all the way home. Looking at her determined expression, Alex sighed and crouched down again. Hop on then. Final stretch. As they continued down the street, the houses grew progressively larger and more imposing. Alex felt increasingly out of place in his worn clothes and muddy shoes. He'd never been in a neighborhood like this before, except once when a foster family drove through to look at Christmas lights. So what do your parents do? He asked, curiosity finally overcoming his caution. To afford a place here, I mean. Riley's arms tightened slightly around his shoulders. My dad works in tech. Investments and stuff. Boring, really. And your mom? She died when I was little. My stepmom's been around since I was 8. Sorry about your mom, Alex said quietly. It was a long time ago, Riley replied, her voice soft. What about your family? Alex swallowed hard. Don't have one. Before Riley could respond, they reached the end of the street. Alex stopped, staring at what lay before them. The house was an actual estate, with wrought iron gates and a long driveway leading to a sprawling mansion set back on manicured grounds. A guardhouse stood beside the entrance, a uniformed security officer visible inside. This is where you live? Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. Riley slid from his back, unfolding her cane. Yes, I should have mentioned that you're rich. The words came out harsher than he intended. That there's security, she finished quietly. They might be suspicious of you. As if on cue, the guard emerged from the booth, hand resting near what Alex suspected was a weapon. Miss Riley? Is that you? We've been worried sick. Who's this with you? Alex took a step back, suddenly acutely aware of his appearance, dirty clothes, unkempt hair, looking every bit the homeless teenager he was. "This is my friend Alex," Riley said firmly, reaching out until she found his arm and gripping it tight.
"He helped me when I got lost."
"He carried me all the way home." The guard looked Alex up and down, suspicion clear in his gaze. Before he could speak, the gates began to open and headlights appeared as a car sped down the driveway toward them. As the sleek luxury car pulled up, Alex had the sudden, overwhelming urge to run, but Riley still held his arm, and something in her earlier words kept him rooted to the spot. "At least I'm living on my terms." The car door opened, and a worried-looking woman in expensive clothes rushed toward them. "Riley, thank goodness. We've been searching everywhere." What happened next would change the course of Alex's life forever. The well-dressed woman pulled Riley into a tight embrace. "We've been calling hospitals. The police. Where have you been?" "My phone died and I got lost after orientation class," Riley explained, her voice muffled against the woman's shoulder. "Alex helped me get home." For the first time, the woman truly looked at Alex. He fought the urge to shrink under her gaze, which traveled from his mud-splattered jeans to his worn-out jacket. Her expression shifted from relief to something harder to read. "Thank you for helping my stepdaughter," she said carefully. "I'm Vanessa." "It's no problem," Alex mumbled, already backing away. "I should go. It's nearly 10 o'clock, Vanessa said, checking her diamond-studded watch.
"How will you get home?"
"Let us call you a ride. Home." The word hung in the air between them. Alex's home was currently a hidden corner beneath a highway overpass where he'd stashed his backpack containing everything he owned. "I'm good." "I like walking," he lied. "Nonsense," Vanessa insisted. "At least come inside for a moment. You must be hungry after carrying Riley all this way." At the mention of food, Alex's stomach betrayed him with an audible growl. Riley laughed. "See? You have to stay for dinner. I insist." She reached out, finding his arm again. "Please? I want to hear the end of that story about the constellation you were telling me." Something about her genuine smile broke through Alex's defenses. He nodded, then remembered again. "Okay, just for a little while." The security guard, still watching suspiciously, stepped aside as Vanessa led them through the gate. Alex tried not to gawk as they walked up the long driveway. The mansion loomed ahead, a sprawling structure of stone and glass, its windows glowing warmly against the night sky. "Martin, please let the kitchen know we have a guest for dinner," Vanessa said to the guard. "And have someone bring Riley's spare charger to the dining room." As they approached the house, the massive front door swung open. An older man in what Alex recognized as a butler's uniform stood waiting. "Miss Riley, thank goodness you're safe," he said, relief evident in his voice. "We were about to send out a search party." "I'm fine, Thomas. Just a little adventure," Riley replied cheerfully. "This is my friend Alex." The butler's eyes widened slightly at Alex's appearance, but his professional demeanor never slipped. "Welcome, sir. May I take your jacket?" Alex hesitated before shrugging off his damp coat, revealing a faded t-shirt underneath. The butler accepted it with the same care he might give an expensive overcoat. The entrance hall took Alex's breath away. Soaring ceilings, gleaming marble floors, artwork on the walls that probably cost more than everything Alex had ever owned in his life combined. He felt completely out of place, like a stray dog that had wandered into a palace. "Let's get you both dried off before dinner," Vanessa suggested. "Thomas, please show Alex to the blue guest bathroom. Riley, honey, go change into something dry." As Riley was led away by a uniformed maid, Alex followed the butler down a corridor lined with what looked like original paintings. The bathroom turned out to be bigger than many apartments Alex had lived in, with heated floors and thick, fluffy towels. "There are fresh clothes in the cabinet, sir," Thomas said. "Mr. Montgomery keeps guest items in various sizes. Please help yourself." Alone in the massive bathroom, Alex stared at his reflection in the mirror. His face was smudged with dirt, his hair plastered to his head from the rain. He looked exactly like what he was, a homeless kid who didn't belong in a place like this. For a moment, he considered climbing out the window and disappearing. These people would forget about him by tomorrow. But the thought of a warm meal and the promise he'd made to Riley kept him rooted in place. He washed quickly, marveling at the array of expensive products lining the shower. The cabinet contained brand new clothes still with tags attached, designer jeans, shirts, even underwear and socks. Alex chose the plainest items he could find, but even those were nicer than anything he'd ever worn. When he emerged, The butler was waiting to lead him to the dining room. The massive table could have seated 20 people easily, but was set for just 4 at one end. Riley was already there, changed into dry clothes, her hair neatly brushed. She turned toward the sound of his footsteps. "Alex, you smell different. Did you use the sandalwood soap? Dad always stocks the good stuff for guests." Alex laughed despite himself. "Is that what that was? I just grabbed whatever was there." "Sit here." Riley patted the chair beside her. "Dinner should be ready soon. Vanessa's checking with the chef." As Alex sat down, feeling the plush cushion beneath him, Riley leaned closer. "I never properly thanked you," she said quietly. "What you did today, most people wouldn't have bothered." "I think you're wrong about that," Alex replied. "Most people would help someone who's lost. Maybe, but they wouldn't have carried them 5 miles on their back." Her smile turned mischievous. "So, are you going to tell me your story now? And don't say there isn't one. Nobody who quotes astronomy facts while giving piggyback rides doesn't have a story." Before Alex could answer, Vanessa returned with a man in chef's whites who wheeled in a cart laden with covered dishes. The aromas that filled the room made Alex's mouth water. "Nothing fancy tonight. Just some roasted chicken, potatoes, and vegetables," Vanessa said casually, as the chef laid out what looked to Alex like a feast fit for royalty. Alex had never felt so awkward in his life as he did trying to match the impeccable table manners of Riley and her stepmother. He carefully mirrored which fork they used, how they placed their napkins, the way they cut their food. Riley, despite not being able to see, had flawless manners, navigating her plate with practiced ease. "So, Alex," Vanessa said as they ate, "Riley mentioned you helped her when her phone died. Where exactly did you two meet?" Alex swallowed nervously. "Downtown near the old bakery on 7th Street. She almost walked into traffic, so I helped her get to the bus stop, but we'd missed the last bus." "And you offered to walk her all the way home?" Vanessa's tone was neutral, but Alex could sense her suspicion. "That's quite a distance." "It wasn't a big deal," Alex shrugged. "I didn't have anywhere else to be." "Are you a student at Riley's school?" Alex looked down at his plate. "No, ma'am." "Alex knows a lot about stars," Riley interjected, clearly sensing his discomfort. "He was telling me about how sailors used to navigate by the constellations." Vanessa smiled tightly. "How interesting. And where do you live, Alex?" The direct question hung in the air. Alex pushed a piece of potato round his plate. "I'm between places right now," he finally said, the closest he could come to the truth without actually saying he was homeless. Understanding dawned in Vanessa's eyes. Her expression softened slightly. "I see. And your parents?" "Don't have any," Alex replied, his voice flat. "Aged out of foster care 6 months ago." Riley's hand found his arm on the table. "That's why you said you don't have a family." The conversation was mercifully interrupted by the ringing of a phone. Vanessa excused herself to answer it, stepping into the hallway. "Sorry about the questions," Riley said once they were alone. "Vanessa means well, but she can be overprotective, especially when Dad's away." "It's okay. I get it." Alex took a sip of water. "Your stepmom seems nice." "She is most of the time. She and my dad got married when I was 8 after my mom died. Cancer," Riley explained. "Vanessa's been pretty great, especially after my accident. The one that—" Alex trailed off. "Made me blind?" "Yeah, car crash 3 years ago. Traumatic optic nerve damage." Riley's voice was matter-of-fact. "It was rough at first, but you adapt. Learning to navigate the world differently, using your other senses more." Alex admired her strength. "Is that why you were at orientation class? To learn your way around?" Riley nodded. "I'm trying to be more independent. Dad's super protective. He'd keep me wrapped in bubble wrap if he could. He even hired a full-time aide to help me at school, which is completely embarrassing. He's just worried about you." "I know, but I'm 17. I need to learn to do things on my own." Riley's expression grew determined. "That's why I tried taking the bus today. To prove I could." Vanessa returned, her face tight with worry. "That was your father," she told Riley. "His flight's been delayed due to weather. He won't be back until tomorrow afternoon." She turned to Alex. That was also him asking about the strange boy sitting at his dining table. Alex shifted uncomfortably. "I should go." "Actually," Vanessa said, surprising him, "he asked if you would consider staying the night. It's late, the weather's turning again, and he'd like to thank you properly for helping Riley." Alex stared at her in shock. Stay here? For the night? We have plenty of guest rooms, Riley said excitedly. Please say yes. We could watch a movie. Well, I could listen while you watch, or just talk more. I don't want to impose, Alex began, though the thought of sleeping in a real bed instead of his usual spot under the overpass was incredibly tempting. You wouldn't be, Vanessa assured him, though something in her tone suggested she was following orders rather than making the offer herself. Thomas has already prepared the East guest suite. Alex looked from Vanessa's polite smile to Riley's hopeful expression. A night of warmth and safety, it was too good to pass up. Thank you, he said finally. That would be amazing. After dinner, Riley gave Alex what she called the audio tour of the house, describing rooms as they walked through them with amusing commentary. This is the library. Smells like old books and Dad's cigars. Which he thinks we don't know about, she explained as they entered a 2-story room lined with bookshelves. And this is the music room, where my piano teacher tortures me twice a week. As the evening progressed, Alex found himself relaxing for the first time in months. Riley was easy to talk to, lacking the judgment he'd come to expect from people when they learned about his situation. When they finally said goodnight, Alex was shown to a bedroom larger than any he'd ever slept in, with a private bathroom and a view of the estate's gardens. He sank into the soft mattress, clean and full for the first time in weeks, marveling at the strange turn his day had taken. Tomorrow, he would meet Riley's father, a man wealthy enough to live in a mansion with security guards and staff. Tomorrow reality would return, but for tonight Alex allowed himself to enjoy this brief glimpse into another world. He fell asleep wondering what it might be like to belong somewhere like this. Morning sunlight streamed through curtains. Alex had forgotten to close the night before. For a moment he lay confused by the softness beneath him and the warmth of real blankets. Then it all came rushing back. The blind girl, the mansion, the offer to stay the night. He sat up, taking in the luxurious guest room in daylight. A clock on the bedside table showed it was already past 9. Alex couldn't remember the last time he'd slept so soundly, or so late. On the streets, sleeping deeply could get you robbed or worse. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Hello? Alex called, hastily smoothing the rumpled bed. The door opened to reveal Thomas, the butler from last night. Good morning, sir. Breakfast is served in the sunroom whenever you're ready. Fresh clothes have been laid out in the bathroom for you. Before Alex could respond, the man had disappeared. In the bathroom, he found another set of new clothes, casual but expensive looking. His own clothes from yesterday were nowhere to be seen. After getting dressed, Alex followed the faint sounds of conversation down the hallway. The sunroom turned out to be a glass-walled space filled with plants and comfortable furniture, overlooking gardens that stretched to a distant tree line. Riley sat at a table laden with food, laughing at something Vanessa had said. She turned at the sound of his footsteps. Alex, finally! I thought you might sleep all day. Her smile was bright, her dark glasses reflecting the sunlight. Sorry, he said, suddenly self-conscious. I'm not used to beds that comfortable. Please join us, Vanessa gestured to an empty chair. Help yourself to whatever looks good. Alex sat down, eyeing the spread of pastries, fruit, eggs, and coffee. His usual breakfast was whatever the shelter served when he managed to get there in time, or nothing at all. Did you sleep well? Riley asked, deftly spreading jam on a piece of toast without assistance. Best sleep I've had in a long time, Alex admitted, filling his plate with a little of everything. Thanks again for letting me stay. It's the least we could do, Vanessa replied, her tone warmer than it had been last night. Riley told me more about your journey here. Carrying her all that way was incredibly kind. Alex shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. No, Riley said firmly. They wouldn't. Trust me, I know. They chatted easily through breakfast. Alex learned that Riley attended a prestigious private school with special accommodations for her blindness. She played piano, spoke conversational French, and volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends. What about you? Riley asked. Before everything, what were you into? Alex hesitated. It felt like talking about someone else's life. I was on the debate team at my high school, and I worked at an electronics repair shop after classes. The owner taught me how to fix almost anything. Really? Riley leaned forward, interested. So if I had a broken radio or something, you could fix it? Probably. Depends what's wrong with it. That's a useful skill, Vanessa commented. Have you thought about pursuing it professionally? The question caught Alex off guard. The future wasn't something he thought about much anymore. Survival took all his energy. Sometimes, he said quietly, but trade schools cost money and you need an address for job applications. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. It was broken by the sound of a car pulling up outside. Vanessa glanced out the window. "That's your father," she told Riley, standing up. "He's back earlier than expected." Alex's stomach tightened. He'd been so comfortable in the morning sunlight he'd almost forgotten this wasn't his world. The arrival of Riley's father, the actual billionaire who owned this mansion, slammed reality back into focus. The front door opened and closed. Voices echoed from the entrance hall. Then footsteps approached the sunroom. The man who entered was not what Alex had expected. Instead of the elderly businessman he'd imagined, Riley's father was in his mid-40s, tall and athletic-looking, with the same dark hair as his daughter. He wore casual clothes that probably cost more than a month's rent at any apartment Alex had ever lived in. "Dad!" Riley jumped up, moving with surprising accuracy toward the sound of his entrance. "There's my girl," he said, catching her in a tight hug. "Vanessa told me what happened. Are you all right?"
I'm fine.
"Just got a little lost." Riley turned, gesturing in Alex's general direction. "This is Alex. He helped me get home." The man's gaze fell on Alex, who had risen awkwardly to his feet. His eyes were sharp and assessing, taking in everything about the teenager standing in his sunroom. "Gerald Montgomery," he said, stepping forward to offer his hand. "I understand I owe you a debt of gratitude." Alex shook his hand, trying not to seem intimidated. "It was nothing, sir. Nothing." Gerald raised an eyebrow. "From what I hear, you carried my daughter several miles across town in the rain, then refused payment." "That's not nothing in my book. I didn't want," Alex began. "Dad, stop interrogating him," Riley interrupted. "Alex is our guest." Gerald smiled, the stern lines of his face softening. "You're right, of course. Please sit down. Join us for coffee, at least." As they settled back at the table, Gerald poured himself a cup of coffee. "So, Alex, tell me about yourself." It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Under Gerald's attentive gaze, Alex found himself sharing more than he'd intended. About his years bouncing between foster homes, his love of astronomy and electronics, and finally, hesitantly, about the reality of aging out of the system with nowhere to go. "The shelter downtown helps when they can," he explained, staring into his coffee cup. "But there's always more kids than beds." Gerald listened without interruption. When Alex finally fell silent, the man leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "What are your plans now?" he asked. Alex shrugged. "Survive until I turn 18 in a few months. Then maybe I can get steady work, save up for a place." "And school?" "Had to drop out. Hard to focus on homework when you don't know where you're sleeping." Riley reached across the table, finding Alex's hand. "Dad, we have to do something." Gerald nodded slowly. "I believe we do." Before he could continue, Thomas appeared at the doorway. "Excuse me, sir, Mrs. Chen is on the phone. She says it's urgent about the Tokyo deal." Gerald sighed. "I need to take this, but we're not finished here." He fixed Alex with a meaningful look. "Please stay for lunch. We'll continue our conversation then." After he left, Riley squeezed Alex's hand. "See, I told you he'd like you. He seems intense," Alex replied. "That's just Dad being Dad. He sizes everyone up like they're a business opportunity." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "But I can tell he's impressed with you." While Riley went to practice piano, Alex found himself alone in the vast house. He wandered through rooms bigger than any apartment he'd ever lived in, examining artwork that probably cost more than most people made in a year. In the library, he found a collection of astronomy books and lost himself in their pages, forgetting for a while that he was an outsider in this world of privilege. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice the housekeeper enter until she spoke. "Comfortable, are we?" Her tone was cold. Alex looked up, startled. "Sorry, I was just reading. I can put everything back." The woman, middle-aged with a tight bun, narrowed her eyes. "I've worked for the Montgomerys for 15 years. I've seen people try to take advantage of their generosity before. I'm not—" "Miss Riley has a kind heart," she continued as if he hadn't spoken. "But she doesn't always see people for what they are." Alex felt his face grow hot. "I helped her because she was lost. I didn't know who she was or where she lived. A convenient story," The housekeeper's voice dripped with skepticism. Just remember, young man, not everyone in this house is as trusting as the family. She left without another word, leaving Alex feeling like he'd been slapped. Of course the staff would be suspicious. In their eyes, he was just a street kid who'd somehow talked his way into their wealthy employer's home. Maybe they were right to be wary. What was he doing here, pretending he belonged? He should grab his things and leave before lunch. Before Gerald Montgomery offered charity he didn't want, or worse, called the police on him. He was halfway to the guest room to collect his old clothes when he ran into Riley in the hallway. "There you are," she said, reaching out to touch his arm. "I was looking for you. Dad wants to talk to us in his office." Alex hesitated. "Riley, I think I should go." "What? Why?" Her brow furrowed above her dark glasses. "This isn't my world. Your housekeeper just made that pretty clear. Was Mrs. Peters rude to you?" Riley sighed. "Don't mind her. She's suspicious of everyone. Last year she accused my math tutor of stealing a vase that turned up in the attic a week later. It's not just that. Your family is—" Alex struggled to find the words. "I'm not used to people helping me without wanting something in return." "Maybe my dad does want something," Riley said thoughtfully. "Maybe he wants to know you're safe because you helped keep me safe." She took his hand. "Please, just talk to him before you decide." The sincerity in her voice broke through his defenses. "Okay, but if he offers me money, I'm not taking it." Riley grinned. "So stubborn. No wonder we get along." Gerald's office was a wood-paneled room filled with modern art and sleek technology. He sat behind a massive desk, looking up from his computer screen as they entered. "Ah, there you are. Come in, both of you." He gestured to the chairs across from him. "Alex, I've been thinking about your situation." Here it comes, Alex thought. The charitable handout that would solve the rich man's conscience and send Alex back to the streets with a few $100 in his pocket. What Gerald Montgomery actually said next would change everything. "I've made some calls," Gerald began, leaning forward in his chair. "Your situation is unfortunately common. Too many young people fall through the cracks in our system." Alex sat stiffly, waiting for the polite dismissal. "What's uncommon," Gerald continued, "is finding someone with your character. You helped my daughter without knowing who she was or expecting anything in return. That speaks volumes. Anyone would have—" Alex started. Gerald held up a hand. "No, they wouldn't have. Trust me, I know people. Most would have kept walking or called someone else to handle it." He paused, studying Alex's face. "I have a proposition for you." Riley, sitting beside Alex, practically vibrated with excitement. Clearly, she already knew what her father was about to suggest. "I own several properties in the city, including a small apartment building near the university." Gerald's tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather. "The building has a vacant studio apartment. It's nothing fancy, but it's clean and safe. I'd like to offer it to you." Alex blinked, sure he'd misheard. "An apartment? Rent-free for 6 months," Gerald continued, "which would give you time to finish high school and find steady work. After that, we can discuss a reasonable rent based on what you can afford." The offer hung in the air. Alex's throat felt tight. It seemed too good to be true, which in his experience meant it probably was. "What's the catch?" he asked bluntly. Rather than being offended, Gerald smiled. "Smart question. There are conditions. First, you return to school and maintain passing grades. Second, you check in weekly with a social worker I know who specializes in helping kids aging out of foster care. Third, you allow us to provide some basics to get you started. Furniture, groceries, that sort of thing. Why would you do this for a stranger?" Alex's voice was barely above a whisper. Gerald glanced at his daughter, his expression softening. "Because when Riley lost her sight, strangers showed her kindness that changed her life. I believe in paying that forward." Riley reached over, finding Alex's arm. "Also because I wouldn't stop bugging him until he agreed." That broke the tension, and Alex laughed despite himself. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Riley urged. Alex looked between father and daughter. Everything in his life had taught him to be suspicious of help that seemed too good to be true. But something about the straightforward way Gerald spoke without pity or condescension made him want to believe. "If I say yes," Alex said slowly, "I want to earn my keep somehow. I'm good with electronics. I could fix things, help around the property, something." Gerald nodded approvingly. "As it happens, my property manager could use someone with technical skills. We could arrange part-time work that wouldn't interfere with school." Would that make you more comfortable? Yes, Alex admitted. It would. Then it settled. Gerald stood, extending his hand. Welcome to the first day of your new life, Alex. The next few days passed in a blur. Alex stayed in the Montgomery mansion while paperwork was processed and arrangements were made. He met with Gerald's social worker friend, a no-nonsense woman who helped him re-enroll in school and navigate the bureaucracy of his situation. The apartment, when he finally saw it, was small but perfect, a clean, bright studio with new appliances and a view of a leafy courtyard. It came furnished with basics: a bed, a desk, a small dining table, a couch. The refrigerator was stocked with food, the closet with clothes in his size. This is too much, he told Gerald, overwhelmed by the generosity. It's an investment, Gerald replied simply, in someone who deserves a chance. Not everyone was thrilled about the arrangement. Back at the mansion, Alex overheard Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, talking to another staff member in hushed tones. He's got them completely fooled. Probably planned the whole thing. These street kids are clever, they can spot a soft touch a mile away. The words stung, but Alex tried to ignore them. He focused instead on the excitement of returning to school, of having a safe place to sleep, of the possibility of a future he'd thought was lost to him. Riley visited often, accompanied by her aide, to help Alex settle in. She brought homemade cookies, Vanessa helped. So they're actually edible. Books on astronomy from her father's library, and a steady stream of conversation and laughter that made the apartment feel like home. I start back at school on Monday, Alex told her on the 5th day, as they sat drinking hot chocolate at his small kitchen table. Your dad pulled some strings to get me in mid-semester. That's great. Riley beamed. How do you feel about it? Nervous, he admitted. I've missed almost half a year. The social worker arranged for tutoring, but still. You'll catch up, Riley said confidently. You're smart. Anyone who can name all the moons of Jupiter from memory can handle algebra. Alex smiled, warmed by her faith in him. Over the past week, they'd fallen into an easy friendship. Riley was unlike anyone he'd ever known, sheltered in some ways but wise beyond her years in others. Her blindness had taught her to see the world differently, to judge people by their actions rather than appearances. Your dad mentioned a dinner at the house tomorrow night, Alex said. Something about celebrating the Tokyo deal? Yes. Another boring business dinner. Riley made a face, but Dad insisted you come. He wants to introduce you to some people. Alex's stomach tightened. What kind of people? Business associates, friends of the family? Don't worry, they won't bite. She paused. Most of them anyway. Mrs. Hargrove might, but only if you use the wrong fork. Despite her joking tone, Alex felt a wave of anxiety. He'd just started to get comfortable in his new life. The thought of being paraded in front of Gerald's wealthy friends made him feel like an imposter again. The next evening arrived too quickly. Alex dressed in the suit that had appeared in his closet, another gift from Gerald, and took a rideshare to the mansion. The driveway was lined with luxury cars and light spilled from every window of the enormous house. Thomas greeted him at the door with a warm smile that eased some of his nervousness. Good evening, Mr. Alex. The guests are gathering in the main salon. The main salon was filled with elegantly dressed people holding champagne glasses. Alex spotted Gerald across the room, deep in conversation with an older man. Riley sat at a small piano in the corner, playing a gentle melody that floated above the chatter of conversation. Ah, Alex, Gerald called, waving him over. Come, there's someone I'd like you to meet. For the next hour, Alex was introduced to a parade of Gerald's friends and associates. To his surprise, most seemed genuinely interested in his story and his plans for the future. A university dean offered to connect him with the engineering department. A tech company founder gave him her card, mentioning a summer internship program. You see? Riley whispered when they finally had a moment alone. I told you they wouldn't bite. The evening was going better than Alex could have hoped, until dinner was served and they moved to the formal dining room. Halfway through the main course, Mrs. Peters approached Gerald and whispered urgently in his ear. Gerald's expression darkened. He excused himself from the table, following the housekeeper into the hallway. What's going on? Alex asked Riley quietly. I don't know, she frowned, but it doesn't sound good. Gerald returned a few minutes later, his face carefully composed as he addressed his guests. Please continue enjoying your meal. I need to step away briefly to deal with a small household matter. As he passed behind Alex's chair, he leaned down. "I need to speak with you now." Heart pounding, Alex followed Gerald to his office. The moment the door closed, Gerald's friendly demeanor vanished. "Several items have gone missing from the house," he said without preamble. "A gold watch from my dresser, a pair of diamond earrings belonging to Vanessa, and a small figurine from the display cabinet in the library." Alex felt the blood drain from his face. "And you think I took them?" "I didn't say that." Gerald's expression was unreadable. "Mrs. Peters seems to think the timing of the disappearances coincides with your arrival." "I didn't take anything," Alex said, his voice steady despite the panic rising in his chest. Everything, the apartment, school, his fresh start, was about to be snatched away because of the housekeeper's suspicions. "The items were discovered missing during routine cleaning today," Gerald continued. "Security cameras cover most of the house, but not the private bedrooms or the library, for privacy reasons." "Check my apartment," Alex said immediately. "Check my backpack, my pockets, whatever you need to do." "I'm not a thief." Gerald studied him for a long moment. "That won't be necessary. But you need to know I didn't." "What I need," Gerald interrupted, "is to handle this situation properly. Theft is a serious matter, regardless of who's responsible." Before Alex could respond, there was a knock at the door. Riley entered, her face tight with concern. "Dad? What's going on? Why did you pull Alex away from dinner?" Gerald sighed. "Riley, this doesn't concern you." "It does if you're accusing my friend of stealing," she said fiercely. "I haven't accused anyone yet," Gerald replied. "I'm simply investigating missing items." "This is because of Mrs. Peters, isn't it?" Riley's voice rose. "She's had it out for Alex from day one." "That's enough." Gerald's tone was firm. "Return to our guests, Riley." "No," she refused. "Not until you tell me you don't believe Alex would steal from us." The tension in the room was broken by another knock. Thomas entered, his expression grave. "Sir, you asked me to review the security recordings from the past week. I found something you should see immediately." Gerald nodded. "Show me." Thomas stepped aside, allowing someone else to enter the office. Alex's jaw dropped when he saw who it was. The young woman who entered the office was dressed in a housekeeping uniform. Alex recognized her as one of the newer staff members he'd seen dusting in the hallways, though they'd never spoken. "This is Lucia," Thomas said. "She started working here 3 weeks ago." Lucia stared at the floor, her hands trembling. In her palm lay Vanessa's missing diamond earrings. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I needed money for my mother's medicine. I was going to put them back, I swear." Gerald's expression softened slightly, though his voice remained stern. "Theft is a serious matter, Lucia, regardless of the reason. Thomas found the watch and figurine in your locker as well." "I know," Lucia's voice broke. "I've never done anything like this before. My mother's condition got worse and the insurance wouldn't cover her treatment, and I didn't know what else to do." Alex watched the scene unfold, relief washing over him. He wasn't being blamed. His fresh start wasn't ruined. Riley moved closer to him, somehow sensing his presence. "I told you it wasn't Alex," she said to her father. "He would never do that to us." Gerald nodded slowly. "I owe you an apology, Alex. I should have been more direct about my doubts." "You had to investigate," Alex replied, understanding the position Gerald had been in. "I'd have done the same. What happens now?" Riley asked. "Are you calling the police?" Gerald looked at Lucia, still trembling with the earrings clutched in her palm. "That depends. Lucia, I'd like to hear more about your mother's situation." As the conversation turned to Lucia's family troubles, Alex and Riley were sent back to rejoin the dinner guests. In the hallway, Riley grabbed Alex's arm. "I'm so sorry about what happened," she said fiercely. "Mrs. Peters has always been quick to judge people." "It's okay," Alex assured her. "Your dad was just protecting your family." "I get it," Riley's expression was troubled. "But you're part of our family now too, in a way. Dad should have trusted you." The words hit Alex like a physical force. Family. It had been so long since he'd been part of anything that could be called a family. The idea that these people, this girl especially, considered him one of their own was overwhelming. "Thanks for standing up for me in there," he said quietly. Riley smiled. "Always, that's what friends do." They returned to the dinner party, where curious glances were cast their way. Alex sat through the remainder of the meal in a daze, barely tasting the elaborate dessert placed before him. His mind kept replaying Riley's words. part of our family now. After the guests departed, Gerald called Alex and Riley to his office again. Lucia was gone, but Thomas remained standing quietly by the door. Lucia won't be returning to work here, Gerald began, but I'm not pressing charges. That's good, Riley nodded. What about her mother? I've arranged for her to receive the treatment she needs, Gerald said. And I've offered Lucia a position at one of my company's daycare centers once things stabilize at home. She made a desperate choice, but she doesn't strike me as a bad person. That's really decent of you, Alex said, genuinely impressed by the man's compassion. Gerald turned to him. I believe in second chances, Alex. As for you, I want to apologize again for the situation you were put in tonight. It's forgotten, Alex assured him. Not by me, Gerald replied firmly. Trust is earned, and I should have given yours more weight. I'd like to make it up to you. Alex shifted uncomfortably. You've already done more than enough. Actually, Gerald leaned back in his chair. I have a proposition, one that might interest both of you. Riley perked up. What kind of proposition? As you know, Riley has been pushing for more independence, Gerald began. And Alex, you've proven yourself responsible and trustworthy, despite tonight's misunderstanding. Alex and Riley exchanged curious glances. I've been thinking about Riley's future, Gerald continued. She'll be starting university next year, and while she's incredibly capable, there are practical challenges she'll face living away from home. Dad, Riley said warningly, if this is about hiring someone to babysit me at college, forget it. Gerald laughed. Not exactly, though I can't pretend I haven't considered it. He turned to Alex. What would you think about taking a more formal role in helping Riley navigate her freshman year? As a friend and companion, not a caretaker. Alex blinked in surprise. Me? But I'll be a senior next year. I won't be in college yet. I'm aware, Gerald nodded. But Riley will be attending City University, which is walking distance from your apartment. You could continue your high school studies while helping her adjust to campus life. In return, I'd extend your housing arrangement indefinitely and provide a stipend that would allow you to focus on school rather than working. The offer hung in the air. Alex looked at Riley, who seemed equally stunned. Do I get a say in this? She asked her father. Of course, Gerald replied. This only works if you're both comfortable with the arrangement. Riley turned toward Alex, her expression thoughtful behind her dark glasses. What do you think? I think, Alex chose his words carefully, that I'd want to be there for you anyway, as your friend. But I don't want to be a charity case. It wouldn't be charity, Gerald insisted. It would be a job, one with real responsibilities and appropriate compensation. And I'd get to have my friend nearby without Dad hovering over my shoulder, Riley added with a grin. Seems like a win-win to me. Looking between father and daughter, Alex felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging, of having a place in the world. These people had taken him in, defended him, and now were offering him not just help but a purpose. I'd be honored, he said finally. Thank you. The next 6 months transformed Alex's life completely. With stable housing, proper nutrition, and support from both Gerald and Riley, he thrived in school. The gaps in his education from months of homelessness were filled through tutoring and his own determined studying. Riley visited him several times a week, sometimes to study together, other times just to talk. They explored the city, with Alex describing the world around them in ways that made Riley see through his eyes, while she taught him to notice sounds, scents, and textures he'd never paid attention to before. Gerald kept his word about the part-time work, having Alex help with technology around his various properties. The skills Alex had learned at the repair shop proved valuable, and his responsibilities gradually increased along with his confidence. On graduation day, Alex sat among his classmates, hardly believing he was really there. From nearly dropping out to graduating with honors, the journey seemed impossible. Alex Cooper, the principal called. As he walked across the stage to receive his diploma, he heard cheering from the audience. Gerald, Vanessa, and Riley were on their feet, applauding wildly. Thomas stood beside them, clapping with dignity. Even Mrs. Peters was there, her earlier suspicions replaced by grudging respect after months of watching Alex work to earn his place. They were, in every way that mattered, his family. After the ceremony, Gerald presented him with a gift, a scholarship to City University, where he could pursue his interest in electronic engineering while continuing to help Riley navigate campus life. "I don't know how to thank you," Alex said, emotion making his voice rough. "You already have," Gerald replied, "by showing me what's possible when someone with character is given an opportunity." Later that evening, Alex and Riley sat on the rooftop garden of the Montgomery mansion, listening to the sounds of the summer night. "Did you ever think," Riley asked, "on that rainy night when you found me lost on the street that we'd end up here?" Alex laughed. "Not in a million years. I was just trying to help someone get home. And instead, you found your own home," Riley observed. The statement was simple but profound. Home. For years, that word had meant nothing to Alex, just another reminder of what he'd lost. Now it had meaning again. Not just a place to sleep, but people who cared about him, who believed in him. "You know what the best part is?" Riley continued, turning toward the sound of his voice. "Dad's foundation for aging out foster kids. He would never have started it if not for you." It was true. Inspired by Alex's situation, Gerald had established a foundation that provided housing, education, and support for teenagers aging out of the foster care system. In 6 short months, it had already helped dozens of young people avoid homelessness. "Sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest impact," Alex said thoughtfully. "If it had stopped raining that evening, if you hadn't gotten lost, if I'd walked a different way home, if you hadn't been kind enough to help a stranger," Riley added softly. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities neither could have imagined on that rainy night months ago. Alex with his scholarship and newfound family, Riley preparing for college with a trusted friend by her side, and countless other young people benefiting from the ripple effects of their chance encounter. "I'm glad I got lost that day," Riley said, smiling in his direction. "I'm glad I found you," Alex replied, knowing it was the simplest truth of all. Sometimes, the greatest journeys begin with a single act of kindness, and sometimes, helping someone else find their way home means finding your own in the process.